Whoa, let's not do this one. Let's take that one out of the stream. Welcome, 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 everybody. Welcome to Chalk Talk. It's your host, Kim Davis. And listen, we are drive time. You don't usually see me this time of the day, but a lot has been happening in the world of sports. And although we don't only talk about sports here, that's what we're doing today, right? That's a lot of what's happening. So, welcome, welcome. Glad that you are here. The Texans today officially named, well, they officially named Lovie Smith as their head coach on yesterday, but today is when they introduced him. They had a conference and had Lovey, meet the media and not meet him. He knows us, but introduced him as the fifth head coach in Texans franchise history. We also heard from owner Cal McNair. We heard, of course, from Nick Caserio, Pep Hamilton, who is going to be the offensive coordinator, and people like Texas legend Andre Johnson, right? Jonathan Joseph. And we talked to Pep Hamilton. So I'm going to let you hear from all of them today as a part of today's show. And hopefully, if you will, drop in the chat questions that you have. Maybe there are things you want to know that you have questions about what was discussed in the press conference. And I'm going to share with you some of my takeaways. But listen, I'm going to start. And I know there's a lot of questions about the hiring process. And here's what I'm going to say: the process is flawed. I think we all know that when the season ended and the Houston Texans fired David Culley, I don't believe that Lovie Smith was somebody they thought was. I don't think he was a candidate, right? They knew him; he'd been in the building and all of that. By the same token, he's absolutely qualified. There's no question about it. So the process, let's not get caught up in the process. There's issues there that have to be worked on, but think more about the end result. The end result is Lovie Smith is a head coach. This is his third. He's the third NFL franchise that he will be leading. He, of course, led the Bears to the Super Bowl. Was not successful, but he led the Bears to the Super Bowl. He worked for Tampa. He's worked for the University of Illinois, and now he is the head coach of the Houston Texans. And you know, the end result is this was a good move for the Houston Texans, and it was good for basically Lovie Smith did him a solid, right? It's one of 32 jobs, but he helped the Texans help themselves. I'm going to say that. Here's what Lovie Smith said today in terms of, I guess you would say, kind of his opening statement after when he was introduced.
Just think, I'm a high school product of our great state of Texas. And a dream that I, of course, as you start playing football, you want to have a chance to play as long as you can. And me, I always wanted to be a coach. So I say that most guys playing high school football here would like to someday lead their home state team. I can't thank Cal, Hannah, Miss McNair enough for having the faith in me to lead our great program. Also can't thank Nick enough. I've had a chance this past year to work with Nick in a lot of different ways. And people talk about interviews. Sometimes you have an interview, for a couple hours or whatever. Nick got a chance. I had a chance to work with Nick for an entire year, and for him to see me on what I believe, how I believe football should be played, how I think you should coach our young men. So there's just so much I was able to get from that.
Okay, so that was there were, of course, a lot of questions today about the process. When were you notified that you were a finalist? When did you, what do you think about the fact that, the Brian Flores lawsuit? Your thoughts about that? There were questions basically of, do you think you got this job because of the Brian Flores the lawsuit? Those questions were asked of Nick. They were asked in a way of Coach Smith. And he said, listen, I've been in the building. I was the associate head coach. I always, they always came and asked my input and my questions. So you're kind of always being interviewed, right? And he goes, I don't know about when I was a finalist, but I'm basically glad to be here. And he says, and in so many words, he knows he deserves it, right? He's qualified, right? So I want to focus a little bit, at least for this show today, on the end result that we're talking about Lovie Smith being the head coach of the Houston Texans and not a coach, not a player who'd never coached at any position for any amount of time in the National Football League. I think that's important. Here's Nick Caserio. So you know me, y'all know that I've always got these questions. I have these questions. I want to know about who's got the final say, right? There's a train coming by. Don't worry about it. I'm here with you. In the press conference today, some of the sound I can't play because the fire alarm was going off in the stadium. And we just kind of kept rolling. So we're going to keep rolling right now. But listen, I said, listen, I asked him about game day decisions. Here's how Nick responded to that.
Nick, obviously, Coach Smith has a wealth of experience, so there's no question about that. Can you talk about the collaboration, and when it comes to game day decisions, do those lie with Coach, and can you help us with that process?
Yeah, I think once we get to the season, we'll figure out what makes the most sense. I think, and Lovie and I have talked about this, and Pep and I have talked about it as well, and I know Frank, had dialogue as well. Just my role is to kind of be a conduit between our staff on the coaching side and what we're doing on the field, and then kind of on the personnel and scouting side when we're evaluating players and trying to identify the types of players that we want to bring into the building. So I'm kind of in that middle ground. That's kind of my background and kind of how I was raised and developed. It might be a little bit different than what maybe some folks are accustomed to, but that's okay. I embrace it. And again, my responsibility is to serve our staff and to serve the players. Like, that's the most important thing. And if I can provide some insight and I can provide some assistance in one capacity or other, whatever that is. And a lot of times too, and I know, with my role on game day, right? So maybe it's a little unique relative to my position, but a lot of that is taking information in, just having an understanding what happens. Because as an example, let's say you're watching a game as a casual fan and you see the right tackle, blows the assignment, right? Or the defensive end runs scot-free, right? Okay, why did that happen? You automatically say, the right tackle, he got the bozo, he made a mistake, and then he got the quarterback killed. Well, maybe the tight end was actually supposed to chip on that play, and he went the wrong way in the chip, so he's the one that had meat on the play, but he makes the right tackle kind of look like a donkey. So then you go, wait a minute, what happened? And if you're just watching, evaluating just on the outside without a real thorough understanding of what actually took place, it can kind of lead to some rash decision making. So my job is my role, I kind of see it sitting right in the middle, be able to take that information back and forth. And if I can be a resource one way or another, ultimately that's kind of how I view my role and responsibility. And whatever that looks like, whatever Lovie and I feel it makes the most sense, then I'm going to go ahead and do that. If Pep feels there's value in me doing something to help him, like, it's the team above the self. It's not about one person, it's going to be about the team, and that's kind of how we're going to continue to build this. And the players and the people that come in that building are going to have an understanding. Quite frankly, if they don't, then they're not going to be able to be a good fit for the Houston Texans.
Bless his heart. Bless his heart, right? Nick Caserio. Relinquish that control. Listen, not that any of you listening don't know this, but there are coaches in the coaches booth. It's not just Lovie on the headset, and then of course Nick comes in because there's nobody else. There are people in the booth that are designed to do all those things he just talked about. I mean, it is a team of people. You got coaches on the field. Okay, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that because I think that at some point is going to be a challenge. And for the local people in the market who want to act like it's normal, right, that the GM is dressed in the coach's outfit in the booth with that kind of input every single game, that is not normal. And yes, he's been in the booth, but I've talked to people affiliated with the New England Patriots football operations, and the role there was different. So anyway, I had to ask because you can't even say now, well, Lovie doesn't know, or Lovie doesn't have the background, or Lovie needs some help from Nick. I think that's going to be interesting moving forward, but I wanted to ask that. One of the things that we also talked about today is about Lovie's staff. We know that Pep Hamilton has been promoted to offensive coordinator. Lovie talked about that. Coach Smith talked about that at length, about how glad he was to have Pep. He's worked with Pep before, and especially having Pep as it relates to the ongoing development, right, of Davis Mills, because Davis Mills is who they have in the building right now. So got a chance to also talk with Pep Hamilton after the press conference ended, And here's what Pep said when asked about Davis.
The arrow's up on Davis, and I think we have a lot of work to do nevertheless. I think it was important that he had the experiences, both good and bad, that he accrued this past season. But we have something to build on. You can't teach experience, and I often tell Davis, scars are reminders. We got a lot that we can go back and study and really dissect and really formulate a plan moving forward that's going to help him both fundamentally and as far as his understanding of NFL defenses, so that we can go out and play winning football next year.
What excites you most about this offense?
People talking to you, that was it the process that you could have gone to places perhaps?
So I tried to ask him there. I did get it in later, Pep, and he just talked about what they already have. He mentioned like a Brandon Cooks and Reverend Jordan and just some of the resources they already have on this team. That's what excites him about this offense. And he weighed the opportunity, and he had some other options. And he thought about what's best for his family. His wife was there with him. His son plays football in Pearland. And so he said it worked for his family, and of course the amount of respect that he has for Lovie Smith, and also for his career. So it was the right move for him right now, and he's looking forward. He said when you know a person and their leadership and their ability, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, it's easy to trust and to follow and work with them. So we also asked him about systems, right? Offensive systems. Pep isn't new to the game. He's been around. He's been a quarterback coach other places. He's been an OC other places. So, the question was, has he been able to kind of, pick and choose or pick different things from different systems he's been a part of in figuring out the best system to use moving forward here. And here's how he answered that.
That's a really good question. I would say that just the past 2 seasons, I've had a chance to experience different systems. In LA, that was a different unit, a different system, and just having the exposure to other ways to do it, it gave me an opportunity to self-scout, self-evaluate after being a play caller for 10 consecutive years. And so I'm excited to collaborate with our staff and put the best possible plan and strategy to give our players a chance to be successful on game day.
So Pep Hamilton will be the offensive coordinator. In terms of defensive coordinator, Lovie's going to make those calls. He will be head coach, and he will also be making the calls from the defense. He said that today, so there's no wondering about that. Frank Ross, who was the special teams coordinator last year, will continue to be the special teams coordinator moving forward. They've lost about 3 coaches: a receiver coach, the O-line coach, which is too bad they lost Campion, while this other foolishness was going on. So they've got to hire a receiver coach, an offensive line coach, and there's another coach that left that I can't think of right now. So they've got a few openings if they bring back everybody they had last year. So, we'll see what happens. But Lovie Smith is the 5th head coach of the Houston Texans. I think it was the right move. However, they ended up coming to it. And let me also say this for anybody who's watching now and be really clear about it. I've been asked this, do you think that Lovie Smith was hired because he's a black man and the Texans, they all of a sudden are woke? So no, they aren't all of a sudden woke. I do think the Brian Flores lawsuit and the idea of now you naming a head coach with absolutely no NFL experience was what probably is the thing that woke them up, with the league saying, we know there's a problem. We know there's some challenges. We've got to do better. I think it was a combination of things, but I think the fact that Lovie was in the building, Lovie is experienced and qualified, I think those are the reasons. And the fact that he is also African American, I think is helpful, no doubt about it. But I think it's his qualifications. What they couldn't afford to do is hire a coach that wasn't qualified. Brian Flores has through his lawyers has released a statement that said if he had not filed a lawsuit, he'd be the next head coach of the Houston Texans. So I don't believe that, because I believe that Josh McCown, all indications were that Josh McCown was going to be the head coach of the Houston Texans. So not Brian Flores. At any rate, we're not going to spend a lot of time going back and forth with that because what I don't want to do is to disrespect Lovie Smith's qualifications. I think that would be inappropriate. So again, however they got there, they got there. Alvin says, good Texans hire. You're absolutely right. The process was horrible. And I just think it's important to not hold Lovie Smith responsible for the process. Good afternoon, Charles Strait. I have a legal question for you. I will come back to that. All the right things were said. The Texans wanted to go younger. They had to say the right things, right? They had made such a mess of this process, a mess of the last 2 years. There was really nowhere to go but up. And I say it, Lovey did them a solid because he could have said, I'm under contract. I'll just be defensive coordinator because y'all don't know what y'all doing. But he didn't because he also knows it's an opportunity and that he is qualified. And if he can get the right pieces, they've got some draft capital. He's able to get some coaches in place. And he knows what he's capable of. So it's a great opportunity for him, and he's already here. Alvin said, "Oh wait, hold on a second. Let me play this tape and let." Oh, she's in. Okay. Alvin said, "What did you say, Alvin? The GM should bring the banger players. The coaches handle the boom." Yeah, the GM should bring the players and the coaches should. Yeah, but that's you know how Nick rolls. You know who Nick is. And Mark is right. He said Kim will always be asking Nick that question. I think it's important about autonomy and who ultimately has the final say about game day decisions, right? If you're the coach, you should have that say. And I'm not collaborate with me during the week, but on game day, let me run this thing because I know what I'm doing. That's what I would say if I had the body of work that Lovey has. And I don't think Lovey's gonna have any problem doing what he needs to do and having the kind of control he needs to have. But anyway, I think it's important that they did in fact make the right decision, however they came about it. I can't stress that enough. I also want to let you hear from Jonathan Joseph and Andre Johnson, who were both there today. Here is Jonathan Joseph talking about the Texans hiring Lovie Smith.
Another opportunity to be a head coach in this league. You look at what he's done last year with this team. I talked to guys before on this team last year that love him, guys in the locker room. And I think that's big on the team just to have, a guy that's familiar with the guys in the locker room, proven track record. And obviously, he's a black guy, so that goes a long way, getting guys motivated, getting guys to play because with the hiring process, that can turn sour with guys also. So I think just seeing a guy like him get an opportunity, not just to have it, but, being capable of leading the franchise.
When you saw just kind of the process, if you will, over the past couple of weeks, what I've said to people is Lovey's obviously qualified. Like, don't hold the process against him. But the way it had to work, that's a challenge that black coaches have in the National Football League.
Oh, absolutely. You just look around the league, like, he reminds me a lot of Marvin Lewis. Same type of demeanor, very candid, great leader. Can get your franchise going and steer in the right direction. And obviously, the goal, everybody wants to be, that Super Bowl champion. But at the end of the day, it's about getting stability, getting the right guy. And obviously, color shouldn't matter. You should look at, who's qualified. And I think he's more than qualified. And I think you'll see in due time.
All right.
Jonathan Joseph, there were a lot of former Texan players there. Players who, quite frankly, have never played for Lovie Smith. The Andre Johnson was there. I'm going to let you hear from him. Travis Johnson was there. There were quite a few players, which really shows the kind of respect they have for this coach and Lovey being there. Here is Andre Johnson. And really the question, he talked a little bit about the Hall of Fame and, how he feels about first ballot, how he's going to feel if he doesn't get on the first ballot. He basically said, listen, I don't have any control over that process. It is an honor to be on the ballot. And, he's going to see what happens. But he also talked about the fact that the Texans haven't had a lot of fans in the building, and that no matter who you are, you want to have fans when you play at home. Here's Andre Johnson.
It's very important. it doesn't. I don't care what nobody said. It doesn't feel good as a player to be playing in an empty stadium. Because at the end of the day, your fans is basically your home field advantage. When you're on defense, it feels great to hear that stadium go crazy when you score a touchdown. Everyone to be excited. So I've been through both processes. I was here when I first got here. Everybody was excited. New organization. Had some terrible seasons. I remember fans wearing trash bags on their heads and things of that nature. But then I was a part of getting it back right. So I always tell people the first playoff game we had here, the atmosphere in that building was something I never experienced before. It was crazy. I thought the roof was going to fly off the stadium. So it's very big just to, get everybody on board. I think having Coach Lovie Smith is the right way to get started. And I think, with that hire, you'll, get some of the fans back. And, now it's about just getting the right players in the building and putting a good product out on the field and just going out performing.
All right, guys. Andre's got to be.
So that was Andre Johnson. Hello, Reverend Miller. Reverend Miller said, hey, get out of the way. When you hire me, let me do the job. I think that is probably what Lovie will say. He did say that, hey, listen, I know Nick. I've got a chance to know him over the past year. We've had some, how did he say? I'm going to say spirited conversations. And so I don't think Lovie's going to have any problem saying, listen, I get that you're the boss. I'm about collaboration, but you hired me to be the head coach. Let me do this. I got this. I think he's going to be able to do it and do it fine. And I don't think he's going to have any problem when he needs to kind of putting his foot down. I'm sure they had those conversations when they came to him in the 11th hour and said, hey, want to be the coach? You know what I mean? Like, he did them a solid. He kept them from being really in a horrible place for the franchise, for the city, for all those players. It was going to be a mess if they had hired Josh McCown. I'm just going to say that and move on because they didn't hire him. They did hire Lovie Smith. And I'm going to also let you hear from Bishop James Dixon, who is there now. Bishop Dixon is the president of the NAACP. He's also on the board of the Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation. And I remember when Bishop Dixon was the chaplain for the Houston Oilers. So he's been around for a minute, and he said he has a good relationship with the current president, Greg, Grisham, but he in no way had any input. He was asked about, was he consulted? He said, listen, I'm not a part of the Texans organization, but I think what they did was good today. Here's James Dixon.
Well, I'm honored to have a relationship with Greg Grisham, the president, who's a great guy, and the McNairs. I think, collaborative conversation is what we all need. And so it's about them making decisions. But at the end of the day, we're all people. No process is perfect, but the end result is what matters. What we see here in the selection of Lovie Smith is an end result that is beneficial to this team. First and foremost, I think they're going to win football games. And then secondly, it's good for the community. You referenced being the chaplain during the Oilers days. This is a different organization. And we see progressive thinking, progressive thought and understanding. And no one is shying away from the fact that more African Americans are needed in coaching slots. Opportunities are there. But at the end of the day, you want somebody who's going to win football games and be a good fit for this community. I think Lovie Smith is a great fit on a number of levels. Looking forward to working with him.
That was Bishop James Dixon. So a lot of people on hand today, right? Got a chance to, go over a little bit early, and a few of us have breakfast in the Texans cafeteria with, Cal and his family and Levy and his family. Just no formal interviews, kind of informal, saying, hey, being acquainted on a different level. And in the press conference this afternoon. So here's what I would say. Charles says they were lucky. They're lucky that Lovie was available. Yeah, they are. They're lucky he was available because he didn't have to be. And so Lovie Smith is a good choice. Things work out oftentimes as they should. Don't get caught up in the process. It's the result that matters. And I think we can take that into our own lives, in our own businesses, and in other stuff, right? I think it's the end result that we've got to focus on and not so much the process. The process needs work. The NFL has work to do. And so I said to you guys last week when I had the special show, when I had Charles Drayden, our legal expert, attorney Charles Drayden, joined me to really talk about the Brian Flores lawsuit, that he being Brian Flores, needed a solid team. He needed to have solid lawyers, right? He needed to have a communication strategy because the NFL is a huge machine. And although they do some things poorly as it relates to messaging, they have a ton of resources, but they're just not really good at it. He needed to have a consistent, ongoing message. He needed the right people and the right team. Some of the messaging that's come out in the last 2 days, for his team to release statements that says, if it were not for him suing the team, he'd be the head coach, I think is, not the best way to move forward. But listen, he's not paying me to advise him on how to communicate effectively and efficiently. So that's not my job. But make no doubt about it. There's no mistake that the NFL has issues in terms of discrimination, in terms of their hiring practices, in terms of finding some equity. And if whatever's happened over the past week made the Texans say, oh, wait a minute, we probably shouldn't hire this guy who's never been a coach at any level and who's never called one single timeout in college or in the pros. I mean, think about that. You're talking about now stepping in and having to run an entire system. Granted, Nick could be there on the headsets and guide him. But is that what you want? Is that what you want to try to sell your players on coming in? As the fans who have clearly left the building, because I was at every home game and the fans aren't there, right? So you're trying to get them back in the building. And like Andre said, he thinks that having Lovie Smith will help. They've got a lot of work to do as an organization collectively. And so they are kind of a white paper on what not to do as an organization if you're trying to grow and build, and how to rebound when you've kind of messed up. So they've got to win games, right? You got to win games. You start there, but you've also got to run an organization that is inclusive, that allows for some equity, and from the players, from the community, and from your business partners. And I think that we're going to see really who this Texans organization wants to be, not just on the football field. I think we know the kind of team that Lovie Smith will put together, and with Pep Hamilton as his offensive coordinator, and what kind of business entity, what kind of corporate citizen is the Houston Texan organization going to be. So I look forward to talking about that with you guys. Thank you for tuning in to the primetime version, or the drive time version, if you will, of Chalk Talk. I didn't want to, there's no way I could have missed today what we talked about, being a part of the discussion and having a chance to talk to Lovie. And so I'm glad you guys are flexible. That's what I love about my Chalk Talk tribe. You guys are able to move around and do some things. So all of that. Charles said, maybe he should have said it differently, but they will treat him as Kaepernick. We must always put a sacrifice on the altar to just be treated fairly. Ask Kurt Flood. You are absolutely right. And Charles and I talked about this last week on our special Thursday Chalk Talk show. If you haven't seen it, go back and check it out on YouTube. Take a look at it. Kurt Flood was the one that made a huge sacrifice. It is why free agency exists the way it does today. His playing career was not over, but when he took Major League Baseball to task, and he held them to account for what didn't exist then, but what does exist now, which we know as free agency, he sacrificed his career. And that is what will happen with Brian Flores, right? There's no question about it. He said, listen, I realize I'm taking a huge step. It could be a sacrifice, but I believe it's the right thing to do because this is bigger than coaching and bigger than football. And so, it's difficult for players and coaches who are currently in the league to stand with him because, as Charles said, we saw what happened to Eric Murray, who stood or knelt, if you will, with Colin Kaepernick. He was still a player who could have still performed and played, right? What about Eric Reed? I said Smith. What about what happened with, we've seen it. We know what happens. And so Colin Kaepernick never got a chance to get back to the league, right? He never got a chance to get back in the league. And so there are sacrifices. And I think what's important is that the rest of us do whatever we can to keep having the conversations, to keep pressing the envelope. Like, I've got to keep asking the questions and keep showing up and keep saying, hey, what are you doing over here? What about this? There's a lot of things that have to happen. And so for people who say, well, it doesn't matter, it's just sports. And what I say is sports is a microcosm of society. If it's happening at the Texans, it's happening at Microsoft, right? It's just how it works. And we can learn from all of it. Like, learn from Lovie Smith and how he handled this. He didn't walk away and say, hey, man, y'all disrespected me. You didn't even consider me for this initially. You were going to hire a guy with no experience. He said, and I wasn't in the room. I don't really know what he said. Here's my version of what he probably said. Hey, you know what? I'm qualified. I've been here. I know what it takes to win. Yeah, I'd be happy to lead this team. And here are some things that need to happen for me to do that. Now, I just imagine, I don't know Lovey like that, but I imagine the conversation went something like that. And that's one of the things that we can take away. Not to be mad, but look at, okay, you know what? The process wasn't really what I like, but now I've got this opportunity. And how do I make the most of it for me and my family? And then, of course, the organization and the community and all the parts that matter to you. How do I do that and not get caught up and hung up and caught in my feelings about something that I don't have any control over? And so I think that's one of the big takeaways from today. He also said something. He said, listen, it's not just about talk. It's about getting Black coaches in the room and giving them opportunities. And he said, it's not about what I say, but watch what I do, right? Watch what I do. Basically, and he said he's gonna hire some. He's gonna have Black people on his staff. He's gonna hire some more Black coaches. So you're right. It was a lawsuit. Listen, it was the lawsuit, right, to change the course of them hiring Josh McCown. I think there's no question about that. If it were not for the lawsuit, I think we'd be talking about Josh McCown being the head coach of the Houston Texans. I'm just saying that it was a lawsuit that made the Texans stop in their tracks. They don't want to say that. And it's not for Lovey to say it because that's not, look, it ain't his lawsuit, right? But I'm saying that Lovey's qualified and they're lucky that he was in the building and that they were able to say, okay, you know what, do us a solid. We want to move forward with you, or whatever those conversations were like. That's what I'm saying. You're right. He probably said, this is the salary and terms I have, take it or leave it. He was in a position to basically call his shot and name his number. That's what I think. Because like he said, I was already under contract. You know what I mean? I was already under contract. So just we have to think things through and sometimes not be so emotional. Alvin says, hey, Brian, thank you for your sacrifice. I don't want to make light of what Brian Flores has done. It's big. And, it takes moves like that to start conversations. But the thing is, it can't end with the fact that Lovie Smith was hired today. Because now what? There are 2 Black coaches in the National Football League. So the numbers still aren't good. They're a little bit better than they were 2 days ago, but they're still not good. There's a lot of work to do. Let's not let Brian Flores' sacrifice be in vain. Hey, listen, thank you guys. Tiffany says, I just want to see how long Brian Flores goes without a job. Lovie Smith is a solid selection, but the Texans definitely didn't want to be a part of the NFL's DEI disaster narrative. Yeah, they did not. They are not all of a sudden woke. They are not that either, but at least they made the right decision on this day or 2 days ago. And you're absolutely right, Tiffany. They did not want to be the DEI narrative. So, hey, Brian, thank you for your for your sacrifice. Listen, I think that we wish Brian Flores well, and we need to keep the conversation moving forward because it doesn't end here with Lovie Smith. The NFL needs to continue to be pushed. And what needs to happen is there's got to be conversation about ownership, right? Ownership. That's what's going to change things because it's those 32 owners that get to decide who gets to be one of them, a part of that club. So if the NFL were really changing, he would have been hired as a part of resolving this lawsuit. Um, yeah, again, we know this isn't over, but I do think we need to keep the conversation, and we need to keep pushing these organizations to do more in our communities, because we help them be here. Like, you may not be a Texan season holder, but if you live in Houston, your taxes help build that stadium, right? Your taxes help with the roads and the services and everything around that allows that stadium to be in the city. So you too have some say and some stake, and we have to all think like we have a piece of ownership, even when they really don't want us to think that way. All right, everybody. Thank you, Alvin Wright. I appreciate you, my friend. Hey, Kim, come on through. Wave at the people. We're going to be doing some other stuff later. This is Chalk Talk Drive Time version. Thank you all for tuning in later in the day, and thank you for showing up. Remember, hit that share button. Make sure that you share it with whatever platform you're watching. Share this video, and I will see you guys back on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Unless something comes up before then that I got to hop on and talk to you about. Follow me also on all my platforms on Twitter, um, on Instagram and Facebook, and I will bring you updates throughout the week about what's happening across the board. The Rockets are in New Orleans to play the Pelicans tonight. The NBA trade deadline is in 2 days. We'll be watching that to see if there are any moves. Will the Rockets make any move? And just out of curiosity, will James Harden go to the 76ers? I don't know. You may not care, but I'm interested. And remember, Kimmy Treats is the title sponsor of Chalk Talk. So go to KimmyTreat.com, right? Go to KimmyTreat.com to KimmyTreats.com for your organic hand whipped body butter. You know, y'all dry out there. Y'all need some body butter. And that popcorn, it's yummy, it's healthy, and you got to get you some. All right, everybody, listen, make it a great, great week. And remember, get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. If you're vaccinated, get boosted. In the meantime, wear your mask, wash your hands, stop being in all those crowds. Just give it a minute. We're trying to get through this thing, y'all. We are trying to get through it. And above everything else, do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. I'll see you next time. I keep wanting to say Beyond the Headlines. That's a show I did at Channel 2. I don't know what that's about, but I'll see you next time on Chalk Talk. Make it a great week, everybody. Peace.